All right, welcome to School Safety Subcommittee. It's a few minutes after 4, so we're just going to get started, although we typically have a few people roll in a few minutes late. So we'll just get started. For those who just joined us, we have Lauren Schaefer. She is going to now be our city connection, who's going to take the place of Cindy Lou's role in, keeping notes and keeping us on track, etc. She's the new assistant city recorder. Did I get that right? And so she'll be that name you don't recognize today, but we'll now recognize.
Welcome, Lauren.
And
thank you.
Welcome.
So we're happy to have that help. It's always wonderful. First thing on our agenda is always to review the agenda. So with that, I will pull up the agenda and we shall review it. So based on conversations last time we talked, there was a possibility that we were going to have an officer in attendance today, but I also know that they were still in the process of connecting the right officers with the right subcommittees. And we had a chat the other day with the PD about that, and they were still trying to connect everybody. So I knew there was a possibility they would be here today. I don't see anybody. Somebody flag me when I'm sharing my screen. I can't see all the boxes. So if somebody shows up, let me know. But I haven't seen any officers come, but the expectation is that they will likely start to attend. We did have a quick meeting with a few of them the other day to talk about racial equity, to talk about the work of this commission. But there in that call, there were no SROs. So I expect that they're still trying to identify the right folks for our subcommittee, because it was one of the things we asked for, is that they have some kind of substantive knowledge that's relevant. Moises, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I don't think they knew that they were invited. And so I think that word is barely getting out.
Yeah. So it was clear that they were like, it was possible we might have some jump in today. So I wanted to leave room for that in the agenda should they have arrived. But just as an update to the conversation we had about that last time, I know there was some trepidation with amongst a few folks in the group that having officers is part of the conversation. But because these recommendations will ultimately land in the lap of the police department, we just want to at least have some officers to get some feedback from, get some ideas on like, hey, if we make this recommendation, how would that actually play out in the field, that type of thing. So they won't be voting members, they will be participants. And we hope that, our very best hope is that will bring a ton of value and actually make our recommendations stronger and more effective and more connected to the reality that they all live with every day. And so that's the hope, and we will just kind of hold that place on the agenda going forward for when they're be assigned. So next thing I put on the agenda is to pull up our draft recommendations that we presented to the council and to the full commission, and identify the steps we want to making them final. As you saw, those of you who attended the full commission last week, training is beating us by one meeting. They already have some final recommendations. So it's not a competition, but we do want, one thing we did commit to is having some, several sets of recommendations and not just waiting until the end to drop a whole bunch of them. And so it'd be good to look at those and see which ones are sort of ripe to push forward and which ones we want to finalize in the short term and which ones maybe will take a little more work, a little more, and I'm sure we'll add some as well. So I just wanted to take a look at that. And then a debrief from the data meeting we had with I said school district, but that's not true. That's a typo on my part on the agenda. It was the police department we met with just earlier today, and Moises was able to be there, and so was Steve. So if I don't see Steve on right now, but oh, and there's Nicole has joined us.
He's with policy.
Okay, cheater. So we will just go through what we learned there and how we might mix that into the work that we're doing here, and then we'll set our next meeting agenda. So since we don't have any officers here to introduce, we'll skip right to the third item. Actually, I'm gonna take liberty and switch and have, since it's top of mind right now, Moises and Nicole, would you mind just kind of sharing your key takeaways, those nuggets that you felt like were the best out of that meeting, and I'll shut up for a few minutes.
Go for it, Moises.
I was just about to say go for it. You beat me to it. I was looking for the mute thing there. So yeah, it was great because we got to meet with the actual analysts. I had not met with them. I thought I had worked with Salt Lake PD analysts before, but these are new folks. So it was really good. They're very willing to work with us. One of them is even worked with an organization called the Center for Policing Equity, or Equity and Policing, one or the other. Which is really neat because a lot of data people really don't think that data and equity have anything to do with each other. A lot of people, they think data is objective. There's nothing that can be subjective, but that's really far from the truth. So it was really nice. They were not aware that the report that we got that had the aggregated white and Hispanic together, they had it together. They did not know that's the report that we got. So they immediately sent us one that has Middle Eastern and Hispanics separated. So they did have the race and ethnicity. And so they don't know how we ended up with the other one, but again, very open. They provided that. I'm in the process of looking at it. Siobhan, do you know if we shared that? And I'm assuming we can share it.
If we shared which?
That last report that they sent, it was on the email.
Which email?
Sorry.
Sorry.
You know what? We've only had like 3 emails from Racial Inequity. And what's the?
I know. There's hardly been any. Which one are we talking about? There was an updated one they sent us today.
Well, no. This was, I guess, last week when we were putting the email together. I mean, the meeting together for today. This was last week. I think you started it, but maybe you didn't. Maybe it was Coletta. But anyway, so but I got the report, so so I could just send it to the group so that we could then go ahead and it's a lot lengthier. They did say that always concerns them because they think that, oh, if we give a report that's way too long, people are just going to be too much. But we're like, nope, give it to us all. We're a group and we'll break it up. So I'll go ahead and send that out if you don't find it so long after our meeting. So that'll be our homework for next time, is to look at that. And I'm pretty sure, I haven't looked at it in extreme detail. I haven't done any calculations yet, but I'm pretty sure there's going to be disproportionality with the Hispanics for sure. And they have for different citations and different schools and stuff. But again, they still show that good trend where a lot of arrests at the beginning back in 2013 and down to where this last few years, it's very few. But even those few, there appears to be some disproportionality as well. And then we also talked about, we also asked them, what are their recommendations? What can they do that they think that could help us, especially if somebody already has that lens. That's really nice. If somebody that's working in data has a lens of equity already. And so they had talked about, sometimes my experiences with analysts and police departments that they're very underutilized. We all talk about data-driven decision making and use hotspots and how CompStat should drive, where operations or patrol or community police, all that stuff. That's what it should be doing. But the reality is, everyone I've worked, I've consulted with, none of them use analysts very well. and it wasn't any different here. So we were talking about maybe possibly if we could put a recommendation where data decision making is part of the policy within the police department. And again, that's one of the things we're pushing for is policies within a police department, because we could do that much quicker than legislative stuff. Legislative is great, we'll do that, but while we're working on that pipeline, we'll be doing this. So they really loved it. They were
Yeah,
like,
it really did sound like they were very much underutilized, and I think, and I way underutilized, right, Moises? I'm not going to say specific comments because I promised I wouldn't, or from who they were. So I'm not saying, and you can't make me. But it sounds like they've given data and it's been disregarded in the past, and so it's led to a bit of a waste in resources and a waste in opportunities to actually deter crime and to help with the officers in their general organization. So I think that's a low-hanging fruit for us to be able to enact a policy like that.
One
Not
thing I'm
to
going to layer on top of that is that we talked about sort of a general comment like that, but then each of our recommendations having some sort of metric or something that's tied to the data, so that it really can't be sidestepped, that there has to be some kind of data linked to each of our recommendations where possible.
Yeah, I agree. And they sounded like they were more than happy to take on the extra work and to do all these metrics. They love it. They wish they could do more. So we won't feel bad about adding all those extra data. I don't know what you want to call it, but additional data requirement for all of our recommendations. Yeah.
Agreed.
they really like that.
I just sent an email out to all of you with, not with the report that I haven't found yet, but I will find that. But I sent the open data link that they shared with us about how much of this data is actually stuff we can find ourselves and that is open to the public. If you're a data savvy human who wants to get in there and really poke around, that exists, and it's something that we can, maybe find some of the things we're looking for without having to make a formal request. You all were on that a little longer than I was because my attention was split between the youth subcommittee and that meeting. Was there anything else big that we wanted to talk about from that?
There was another one. Nicole, remind me, because you have a younger brain than mine.
Much younger. So I know the database they're using is fine, so we don't have to have a recommendation on that. There was the underutilization. I did have to leave a little early because I had to hop onto another call.
Oh, yeah. And then to ask, Siobhan, FYI, I emailed you that report.
So I will email it to everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you, because I won't know where to send it to. But the other recommendation is because she worked at again, the Center for Policing or Equity and Policing or something.
It's a policing equity, I think. Shoot, now you have me.
Yeah, it's Center. Yeah, you're right. Center for Policing Equity. Yeah. I'm glad I had it right the first time. Oh, I didn't. What they do is that they go to organizations, police departments, and they look at their data systems and see, what they're collecting, how they're collecting it, how they're utilizing it. And I mean, they'll even give them, some basic questions. Hey, can you provide us with this information? And if they can't provide that, then they'll go and they'll teach them how to do it. But yeah, they'll do a good assessment on their data system for free. And so at first I was like, yeah, ching, whatever, man. But no, apparently they'll do it for free. And so that's going to be one of our recommendations, is to have this center, invite them to see if they're willing to do that for us. Like that, we could have a top-notch system, something that the analysts would like as well. I mean, they like their system, but they know that there's going to be gaps as well, especially again with the lens of equity, right? So it's not just data, but it's equity and policing. Charlie, man. So I don't know how we struck gold on that one.
Yeah, that was fantastic. That they're already kind of looking at it through that lens. We got really lucky. So that is fantastic.
I think she said that they're out of UCLA. So those are the two ones that I remember, and I think there was one more, but
Well, when you think
Josh
of it,
has the notes.
you jump in, but I sent the updated report that Moises sent, and then I also sent a link to that center because she had shared us a link to that equity and policing resource. So we can add that to, it sounds like it's a no-brainer. We can add that to our list of recommendations to just get an independent look at the data resources.
And we have to beat the policy subcommittee
Yeah,
because they're going to try to recommend it. So we want to beat them. to
recommend
it.
it first. So we
But we're not competitive.
No, we have to recommend it first. So Lauren, I emailed you the draft recommendations. I wonder if you would be willing to share them and kind of track any next steps in that document.
So just share it on the screen.
Yeah, just share it on the screen and then see if we can't track any discussion on next steps and things like that. Because as you've seen, the results of my multitasking on the beginning of this call are poor when I try and do it. So if you can help me to be the typer, that will help me to stay a little more present and be a better facilitator. So in the boxes, there are recommendations, and we've gone through this document a couple of times, so I'm not gonna read the whole thing for everybody. This is publicly available. If anybody's watching on YouTube, this is publicly available. We submitted it to the council, so it's something that is out there in the universe. But first recommendation, we actually already have a win, even though this is still in its draft form. They have, mayor's office has at least made the first steps, and I haven't heard, I'm not sure I fully understand all the steps to extending the MOU, but have recommended the extension of the MOU until our work in this commission is complete, so that those can be brought into any update to that. Go ahead, Moises.
You know what I heard is that it actually wasn't ending in February. That actually it ends in the end of the school year, and so for them it was easy just to continue. That was my last understanding.
Yeah, I think they said till like August or September, I think is the new date, or maybe the same date. I'm not, maybe we misunderstood the end date, but either way, I think it's going out until August or September. Is that right? Okay. And then in our conversation, the second one, what we understood from our conversations with the various folks that we interviewed, we thought we needed a new vendor to get this data disaggregated, etc. And we have part of that puzzle from the conversation with the PD today. And then we probably need to wait until after we talk with the superintendent, because we've aggregated a few questions we want to ask the school district. And that was when remind me, Moises and Nicole, did we talked to the school board members after our last subcommittee? Is that an update we owe the subcommittee? I can't remember date.
Yeah, I think we do owe an update on that one. We did meet with the president and vice president of the school board and one other person. Who else was there? Was it just those two?
No, it's just those two from the school board.
Just those two, okay.
And
Yeah.
Go ahead, tell them what we learned on that.
So what we learned is it sounds like we are, and gosh, you're taxing my memory here, Siobhan. Gosh,
I'll help you out.
Tracks, yeah. So it sounds like everybody over in the school district is thinking along the same lines we are. We're all looking at everything from a very an equity kind of lens. Everything we're saying is in lockstep with what they want to do. I think we got a little sideways on our data requests. They weren't quite sure what that meant, but they want to see the same outcomes for their kiddos that we want to see, which is positive outcomes. If the SRO program is not accomplishing those good outcomes, what can we do to change it, amend it? Maybe not necessarily do away with it. There's certainly people who want to keep it with changes, people who want to do away with it altogether, people who want something completely different. So there is a diversity of thought on the SRO program, but the ultimate goal for everybody is positive outcomes that do reduce the school to prison pipeline. We said that it's probably going to be best for us to send any kind of requests for data or something to CC the superintendent, so that he can assist in getting those requests so that they're not treated as like a normal grandma request. And we can make it a little less formal now knowing what we're looking at and what we're trying to do, it's not like we're not looking to be an oversight to the school district. We're looking to see what we can do to make things better on the city end, because that's all we have jurisdiction over. But it sounds like we're going to have a pretty good ally in this, in making some changes on the school district side as well, just based on what the school board president and vice president had to say. And in full, of course, disclosure and candor, the school board vice president is my brother. So we've had other informal discussions before he was even on the school board about the SRO programs. And when I was, even before I was even on this commission too, about this program. So we've had many discussions about this. It's been something on the forefront of both of our minds for a number of years. But we are planning on meeting with the superintendent, Dr. Buendia, and who else was going to be there? A few
There were
other
a couple of
members of
other
the school district.
folks whose names were less familiar with to me, and they were recommended by the superintendent. He said, I'm happy to meet with you. Please include these couple of other folks. And the other folks, I don't remember what all of their roles were, but Dr. Buendia is familiar to this group, that student services group. And so hopefully we will have that in the next week or so. I will just, from a logistical standpoint, when that meeting is set, we cannot accommodate everyone's schedules, because what I've learned is that's impossible on this commission. So we just have to kind of go for it and hope that we can get a good number of people to participate. So when
it's looking like February, was it 24th at 9 a.m. is going to be the magic day and time. Dr. Buendia's schedule is pretty restrictive, so it's looking like February 24th at 9 a.m., which I can make work.
Yeah, by process of elimination, that's where I think we landed. So as soon as that's official, I'll send it out to this group, so you can hopefully attend if you're able. What the couple of things on is that we have stored up to ask is sort of the same question we asked to the PD today, is how do we expedite, make simpler our requests for data? So that was there, because right now what seems to happen, because we're sort of a formal commission and we're going through their main offices, is that we get lots of stops on the way. We get a little bit of a telephone game where we have to ask this person asks that person, this person asks the real people who know, and then back it comes. And so we're trying to just be a little more efficient and actually get a little back and forth about, here's what we're trying to figure out, how do we ask for that data, and have a little more of a informal conversation. And it sounded like from the school board members that would be, this is the first step to getting there. So that's why this all relates back to the draft recommendation we're looking for there. We've gotten a little off track, but then the other was for the youth subcommittee. We wanted to extend an invitation to parents who've had whose children have had interactions with SROs. We also wanted to extend an invitation to administrators based on the conversation we've had here, that we want to really understand how that works with administrators, what their thoughts are. And so to have one of those small group meetings with them. We haven't had much luck recruiting to date. And so we're hoping to have the superintendent's office help us to get the right people into those conversations, so that we can have a good set of information to work from and see what we need to do about kind of the on-ramp to the SRO program, the admin. So that's our first step to that. So anything else to add before we leave this second recommendation? Go ahead, Moises.
This second recommendation, go ahead. Sorry, Kamal.
No, after you.
So this second recommendation, is there going to be other recommendations on data, or this is the one?
Well, we decide that. Tell me
Okay.
what you decide.
I just want to know. I just didn't know if I should wait for you to go to the others. One of the issues again is, are they collecting the right kind of data? And so that's my big question with schools. Are they collecting the right kind of data for SROs? Because with PD, we're collecting, yes, the citations they provide, but what we're not collecting at all is, the work they're doing on the other roles, because it's a very small role that they have in schools, being a law enforcer. Most of their work is in informal counselor and educator. So are they collecting that data? And if not, what can we do to support that? Part of it is going to be working with that oversight committee in creating those performance measures, right? To see, are they providing these things that you say that they're going to do. And two of those things are, being the mentorship, teaching classes, teaching social emotional learning skills. Are they doing that? Is it being documented? If it's being documented, then we could see, here's the data. Yes, they're doing it. No, they're not. If it's not documented, we can't say anything. And I don't think they're documenting it. I don't know if I know a district that has been able to show that they have a data system collecting all those other things that SROs are doing besides the law enforcer role.
Yeah.
And that's why I want to establish more open communication, is to see, does this even exist? And I think they got a little, my impression is that they got a little worried that we were going to be punitive with them, when really we just want to see if that data even exists. And if there's a way, as part of our SRO program on the city side, to add additional funding to maybe allow them to start tracking that data if it's not there and they don't have a mechanism for tracking it.
That'd be great.
So that's, yeah, I think they got a little, school districts are different. And I always come off as the harsh attorney type. I don't have to be anything other than that. I abandoned my social worker ways long ago.
We could tell.
Yeah, I know, right? With reckless disregard, I've abandoned my social worker style. But so I kind of get the impression that that's kind of where things got sideways. And I know that's not where we're at. We're not punitive. We just want to know, is there data? If there's not, what can we do to fix that, so we can start tracking this data and we can track how this program is affecting our kiddos, especially our kiddos of color.
If they can develop that, some type of data system for that, they would be for sure leading Utah, if not the whole country, because I don't think that stuff exists. And so if you're wanting to measure what is the SRO, what's the school-based law enforcement programs, what do they bring to the schools, without having all that other data, they're not going to be able to say yay or nay. But if they did it, man, they'd be way ahead.
Yeah, and this is maybe a good time for me to let you all know that I failed you all. I didn't do my homework as assigned. So I was going back through our meeting last week, and having to watch myself on that is so painful, but just going through and reminding myself of what I committed to do to make sure that I had checked them all off the list. And that was one that I forgot to write down, is that I'm going to give you guys a draft list of the criteria we've come up with, so that we can all work on that together. And that I did all my homework assignments except for that one. So I will commit to getting that between this week and our next one, because that all comes back to this. And I think that list will be helpful as we talk about data and talk about the types of data that we want to ask of them, or that we're hoping that they can track, because it will hopefully be tied to those criteria. So it's still on my list, even though I didn't get it by my due date. So
sorry, Kamal, I cut Kamal off.
You did. Go ahead. Let's
Oh yeah, no, I was just curious what all the board was. I was just curious. So Nicole, you were saying that there are certain things that they didn't understand quite what we were asking, as far as, or what were exactly those things they didn't understand?
So we put together a massive data request, and truth be told, I worded it the only way I know how to word a data request, which is in the form of an interrogatory. And, when I draft those, there is going to be an attorney on the other side who's going to wordsmith it, parse it out, figure out any way they can to avoid answering it, or to give me as little information as possible. And, I was pretty clear about that if you don't understand something, please let me know, because I understand. I'm going very hyper technical here with what we're looking for. And I think it kind of caught him off guard of how do we answer this. And so we ended up getting this spreadsheet back, and I think Siobhan shared it with us, and it made no sense at all, like absolutely no sense. And so I forwarded that to the vice president. He forwarded it to Melissa, and they looked at it and said, yeah, I don't think they quite understood. And I think maybe there's a bit of a misunderstanding of what you guys are doing. And so let's meet. Let's get you guys together to really talk about what you guys are doing, because I think in talking to you guys, we're on the same page. we're after the same goals, all of us. The school district, the school board, we're all on the same page in what we want to do. But the divide between the city and the school district is pretty wide right now, which I think is going to get us to our next recommendation, which will help bridge that divide. And I think it's going to be a crucial one, which is the full-time education liaison. I think that is absolutely necessary. I don't think we can have a city this big and a school district that big without having a liaison, especially when there's an SRO program that bridges the two. I think that is going to be absolutely necessary to keep those doors open and those conversations going.
Yeah. And so I can send you that, Kamal, but it was a longer document, and we were asking, we just really wanted to see what kind of data they had, and it didn't go great. So this is the softer side of Sears. We're gonna go and talk to the superintendent, build that relationship, help him understand what it is we're trying to achieve, and then work backwards to who should we be sending these requests to, what should they look like, that type
You
of
should
thing.
have asked me. I get data from them all the time, but I'm not a lawyer. So you guys did share that data that they sent back?
Oh yeah, there was nothing in it though. It was like 3 lines of unintelligible, like it legitimately made no sense. There was nothing in
Okay.
there. I can pull it up and show it to you. It was very
No,
like,
that's fine. But just for the future, I work with school districts and police departments throughout the whole state and the country. I'm very used to requesting for data. And so if I could at least be put in the loop, that would be very helpful. Thanks.
yep. I'm pretty sure we looped you in, but again, loads and loads of emails. We'll flag
Yeah,
it differently next
I didn't
time.
see it.
Yeah, no, I
probably
doubt
one
you
of
saw
those-
it. Yeah, I doubt you saw it. And I just happened to have time to be able to draft something at that moment. Like if you caught me now, I'd say, no, there's no way I have time to do anything except participate in a meeting. That's all I have time for right now.
I would
So
have called somebody and talked to them.
Lauren, will you just make a note on that second one when you have a chance, just to say we're gonna have additional data data recommendations forthcoming, like after that meeting, and after the meeting today. That will likely not be the only data recommendation. That one will be updated after this meeting with the school district, and we'll probably have additional sort of data requests or
Okay.
data recommendations around data. And you
And do
don't
you want it
take notes publicly if you don't
like
want
down
to.
here?
No, just in that first box that we were talking about.
Okay.
If you want to just jot it down separately, I understand that taking notes in a public forum is not the easiest way to do it, but if you have a different way to track it, that's fine as well. But it would be
I promise
associated
I'm
with
taking
that.
notes.
I'm pointing at the screen, which is also helpful. It would be associated with that second one in that first box there.
Okay,
That starts
part.
select would be associated with that one, just as a note.
Awesome.
We'll update that one after our meeting with the school district, and we'll probably have other data recommendations going forward. And then we can jump down to the next box. Okay. Yeah, so subcommittee has been given authorization to submit recommendations to the staff on what evaluation criteria will look like. We know based on the previous conversation that that's waiting on me to get that started. Establish goals of the SRO program and determine if the SRO program is, I think that basically is the same thing as the one above it, right?
What are you reading?
The
trying to follow what you-
information in the box there.
In the box? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The subcommittee has been given authorization to submit recommendations to the staff on what evaluation criteria could look like. And we would establish goals of the SRO program and determine if they're still meeting them. So there, I guess one is criteria, one is goals. Because we have talked about the goals are mentioned a few different places, a few different ways. But we had talked about just like kind of cleaning that up and saying goals of the program are criteria of whether they're actually meeting those goals might look like . You look confused, Moises.
Oh, no, and I definitely think we should have SROs to assist in that piece as well. Since none of us are SROs, then I would not feel comfortable putting all the criteria and goals on a field that I myself am not part of.
Right, and I think this is gonna be in lockstep with the changes to the statute. I'm assuming it's gonna go through. I haven't been paying a whole lot of attention to that one, so I don't know where it's at in the process. But the statute would require the establishment of goals as well.
Yeah.
Not that we would
Yeah.
establish them for them, but
Yeah, I think that these are all, just submitted for consideration. I don't think that we are the end all be all creator of this. These are all just us, based on what we know, here's what we think would be good. Which is why the first one is worded a little more conditionally to say submit recommendations on what those criteria could look like. Yeah, I too don't think that we need to be dictating. There are other people put in positions to do that.
Yeah, I don't know about that bill though.
is it not looking good?
I don't know, but that is one expensive task.
What's the fiscal note on it look like?
There's none.
Really?
But
So there's no
yeah, it
fiscal
just
note
says
there?
USB, take care of it.
Mhm.
And talk about you mentioned definitions in the past, Nicole. One of mine says school personnel. All school personnel will have to go through this training.
Does that
That
include
is probably custodians,
Yeah.
the administrative assistants, hallmark. I mean, everybody, right?
Cafeteria people, yeah.
And that's at least 40 hours. That's a lot of training. That's a whole week of training to have everybody do that in every school district that has SROs. We could barely get the SROs and administrators in that training, and that's only 4 hours. So
Yeah.
they're gonna have to change that. I get, in theory, great idea. We should all know why the cops are there, but in reality, and then the other part is secondary only. Even though here in Salt Lake that may not be a big deal, but in a lot of parts, they love having their SROs in the elementaries. They really practice community policing in there. They love their SROs in there. Oh boy, that's going to be a tough fight, especially like sheriff's offices.
Interesting.
So I'm interested to see what's going to happen with that.
Yeah, I haven't had that one on my radar. I've had a couple family law bills, but not that one.
This is the one that we've been getting updates from the city on. The one
we
you
got one
provided
update.
comment to.
We've gotten one update. I normally would flag something like this, but I've been so busy haven't even been able to flag it on the legislative website to get updates.
Yeah, me either.
So I think that Moises gave some feedback on the bill, but I don't think we have we don't have an up to the minute
Mhm.
Update on where that's at. And so I hope that we will get one, and I can ask for them to give us an update on where that stands.
Yeah, I wish we talked to Hollins and Thatcher.
Yeah, that would have been nice. But I know they're busy too.
Next up is review budget allocations. I believe this was also in the request, is that we wanted to understand how much money is being spent on this, and and I imagine this will be down the road once we look at what our recommendations will be, then we'll have the data, the budget data, to make sure we're saying, well, theoretically, if we say, hey, we want to take this responsibility away from SROs and move it over here for, in hopes of better outcomes, that we could look at what that might do to a budget. Alternately, though, the more we talk about this as a full commission, and as I talk to my fellow facilitators, this is also a little bit down in the weeds. So, I mean, certainly we have every right to make budgetary comments, but it's also, if we want a different outcome, it is really for the people on the payroll at the city and the school district to actually do the changing, right? And so it's not like a zero-sum game. We're not saying, hey, here's how much money we should move this over here and this over here. Perhaps one of our recommendations will be, hey, spend less or add more to that pot. So the more I think about that one, the more I'm wondering if we leave the budget part to those who deal with budget and just say, here's the changes we want made. and let them do the dollars and cents. I don't know. What do you all think?
I totally agree with that. I mean, after Matrix, is that the accountants?
Mhm. Yeah.
After the president, for me, they basically brought in a formula and said, you know, whatever you guys come up with, that formula is going to restructure where money goes. And I'm like, awesome. I got my logistic regression here that I could just plug in the numbers and boom, I'll get my dependent variable to change. Done.
Mhm.
And so for us to be looking at that, again, that's not my area. So I was thinking, yeah, we would maybe send back, but you know, maybe not totally be ignorant of the budget and maybe still have some, you know, thought process and maybe input. But
Yeah. I
man, if
mean,
they're already doing that,
we can say, you know, hey, we recommend this. And by the way, we also learned along the way that this is a pretty big ticket item. And, you know, just sort of note, like, we've heard from other cities that this would cost X amount of dollars, just, and add that into our recommendation because, hey, we learned that along the way and that'd be good information for people who are implementing to know. But we are not in a position of needing to be the implementers. We are the recommenders. So this one is just, I've had some additional thoughts. So maybe Lauren, if you'd just be willing to notate that one is sort of maybe not something we need to do, or we could adjust that one. The mayor's office needs to hire an FTE to address equity in education. I mean, does that one need more work, or can that one just be final? I don't know. What do you all think? Do we need to think about that more? Do we need to add some more detail on what that person would do? Or I mean, that one feels pretty standalone.
So
What do you think?
I think that's standalone, and there was an FTE with that job through the Becker administration and through the Biskupski administration. So it's not a new position. It's one that was eliminated for whatever reason when Mayor Mendenhall came into office. So I think we can use the previous, and maybe we check to make sure we have the correct title, the correct job title, so that the staff can look back and get the full job description in place. But that's, I don't know that it needs any more wordsmithing personally. I think
All
it's one we
right.
can send
So
along.
if Lauren, if you'd just make that note that we just want to get whatever the job info from the previous administrations, what the name of it was, and then we can. Does any further discussion from the subcommittee about just maybe pushing that forward and calling it close to final?
the name of the position before, well, at least the one that Angie had, was a senior advisor for education. That's what it used to be called.
Thank you.
I would wordsmith this only because I'm seeing it as maybe a police officer may see it, or somebody that's being asked to become more effective, which is you're telling me that I'm not effective, or and so I would maybe change it in development programming to support SROs. To support SROs on being effective or something like that, rather than.
Well, I think maybe not needed to make SRO. No, you're right. It does need some wordsmithing, Mo. I think you're absolutely right. I just don't want to say they're going to support SROs because then that bleeds into Salt Lake City PD's territory, and we don't want to infringe on their territory if you know.
And when I originally wrote this, it was, the intent was to keep the door open because I didn't know, maybe we would end up deciding to eliminate the SRO program entirely, and maybe that was our recommendation. So I wanted to word it broadly enough that if, you know, equity in education is the goal, then it's not just the SRO program that person would be tied to, that they would be tied to that broader goal of equity in education.
Well, then do we need to put SROs in there anyway?
Yeah.
Maybe.
What do you think?
Maybe something along the lines of not develop programming, but maybe to track programming as it relates to equity in Salt Lake City. Because I don't want to step on SRO toes if we're keeping them in, and I also don't want to preclude the eliminating them altogether if it shows that they're not the best option for our kiddos, or maybe an alternate program.
What
So
if
I
we
don't
keep
wanna-
it simple and leave it at that and erase everything else? Everything that follows.
As it relates to equity in education within Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
And I think
Equity
maintain a good
within
working,
education.
right.
Yes.
Keep the maintain a good relationship, because I think that is necessary.
Okay. And
Yes.
yeah, so good.
Yes.
Yeah,
I like that.
So
yeah.
then we're not prescribing what everything that person would do, but that
Agreed.
would be their overall.
Yeah,
Okay.
keeping it broad enough. 'Cause, yeah, I don't want to have this, this FTE in the mayor's office do, the sergeant's job. That's, I don't know.
Exactly.
That if we're keeping SROs, we don't want the mayor's office doing that job. That should be in the law enforcement side of things. But there should be a relationship between this FTE and the SLCPD and the school district. Is kind of what I'm saying. There needs to be that triumvirate of discussion happening.
That's the
Right.
word I was going to use too.
Triumvirate, yes, me too.
But I like that it's just focused on education in Salt Lake.
Yeah.
Whatever that may look like. That really opens it up to different
Here's
type
a
of
question.
programming, and I like
Here's a
that.
question.
Yes.
This commission is specifically tasked with looking at racial equity. Should we add that term? Or should this person's job, I mean, I wasn't on all the calls with Angie Doan, so maybe equity was a broader term for her, but
It was mostly
was.
racial equity. It was almost entirely racial equity. There was a lot of disability equity.
Disability. Yeah. She worked with disability as well.
There was disability, mental health. There was a lot of that, but a lot of it was on the racial side of things.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't. I mean, yeah, we are the Racial Equity and Policing Commission, so that needs to be a component. But even our children of color who have mental health issues, who have different abilities, I think have even worse outcomes than the white kiddos who have the same issues.
okay. I just want to make sure as this gets pushed forward and gets, as we saw today, the telephone game changes things over as they get passed through different lenses. And so I want to make sure that piece does not get lost.
I mean, I guess they can always change it, right? And say, we're going to expand it, but racial will be part of that, I guess. But you're right. We are the Racial Equity Commission. Yeah. So
I mean, because equity can be defined a lot of different ways by a lot of different people, as we've learned. Yep. And so it could end up being a person
gender equity,
and all of those are worthy causes, not to take anything away from gender equity or, disability, etc. I just want to make sure that is here somewhere. So for now, let's leave that one and then continue on to the remaining. If you don't mind, Lauren, taking us down to the next. The literature review. How's it going, Moises?
Good. Actually, well, as good as can be expected when we're all time poor. But actually I've been focused more, unfortunately, not as much on the school piece. Yeah, well, yes and no. They talk about the CIT team, right? Mm-hmm. An expansion of the CIT team is something like Cahoots, or in Denver they have STAR. We wrote a little bit on it on the email on where there is a team that's non-law enforcement. They're a mental health professional and a paramedic usually is the team. They're the ones that go to a lot of these calls that PD usually is called for, and a lot of the training goes towards the dispatch. Dispatch has to know how to triage this, and so then they triage it, and then they'll send it to it goes to Cahoots or STAR, or okay, this does go to the police department. And what I like about Cahoots is that they've done this for 30 years, and they've got all kinds of data on it. And it's not something we have to do exactly like them, but it's something that we could use as a model and see. Look at all these numbers. Well, that's important for us, but this isn't, and so forth and so on. But I remember I was talking to Steve about this, and one thing he did bring up is also like dispute resolution. So a lot of times cops are called because neighbors are fighting over the fence line, or the pinchy coconut fell on my side, even though we don't have coconuts here, just dumb stuff. And they're being called repeatedly. And sometimes the officers show up with a terrible attitude, right? They're not practicing good community policing. And, they should, but sometimes we don't, right? Any of us. So having maybe that part of that team have somebody that's more on the dispute resolution. And then lastly, I got a call from the SRO sergeant and an administrator here in Salt Lake City saying that they're really concerned because administrators in the elementary level are calling SROs to come and address problematic behaviors. And the SROs are scared to death. They're like, we don't want to deal with that stuff. We're not mental health professionals, man, and I don't want to end up in YouTube. Right? But it's these
pepper spraying a 9-year-old girl. Yeah.
That happens on the junior high level too.
Yeah.
Yes. And so there's there are behavioral schools. They have behavioral units. There's like a few schools in the district that take these higher level kids, and probably tier 2, tier 3 level kids.
Yeah, the
and
CBTUs.
So they're saying, we give the talk, we're like, okay, we're gonna go because we don't want to say no to our admin, we're gonna keep that relationship. But it's scary, and we always train them to have that exit strategy. So if things start going south, hey, we're not going to be sucked into slamming this kid or pepper spraying or send the dogs at them or anything like that. That really should be taken care of at those schools. So maybe part of that team, or maybe it's a different team, can go and support. And now with this liaison, if we could get that, maybe that that person can help coordinate it. They also have some that mental health professional can go to the schools too, and they address the issue, not the cops. They should not be going to those elementary schools at all.
I agree. Yeah, no, I love the idea of a mental health professional, social worker. And, when I talk about eliminating the SRO program, part of it is how much of this can social workers do? And I'm thinking specifically of those mental health sort of scenarios where an officer is just not equipped and is not going to be the best option, but, a trained mental health person would fit the bill perfectly and would be able to handle that situation.
So
right, in some situations, so I agree. Here's the problem you run into with schools. Like, we have social workers, some are great, some are not great. And that's the issue we run into when you have an issue of one who's not active or one who falls below the expectation lines. Like, then what do you do? Like, for instance, I taught in one of those behavior units for 7 years. And you have violent kids, you have kids that do inappropriate sexual actions, and like there's a line of teachers and admin of what we can and can't do. So when those lines are crossed and your social worker isn't able to get through either, then what? Like, especially when it's a sexual act, like with a kid with a disability, like what do you do? Where do you go? And I think that's where most schools are stuck right now. Like, we don't currently have one, but when I had one, like that, it's every year there's multiple things brought up. It's just like, what do you do in this situation? Like, you just feel powerless.
Yeah. Guys, it's 5 o'clock. And so I am going to keep us on time, even though we're in a great conversation. I don't want to cut it off, but
we don't care about training.
But I want to flag, Lauren, can we just make sure that we pick this conversation up at our next subcommittee meeting? Because I really like the idea of talking about these alternatives, because that's one thing we've talked about is like, are there other jobs that are more appropriate for other people to be doing to create that safety in schools as opposed to the SROs? And so it sounds like we have, the social work, and then I really like the dispute resolution idea, that maybe we can talk about that a little bit more and what that might look like at the different levels. So I don't want to lose that, but I also don't want to take you guys over time too much. Moises, you have something to add?
While you're using the word as opposed to, I would also say and or in addition to.
Yeah.
Right.
More resources, or spreading those problems,
or bring it to support the SROs.
Yeah.
And Nicole, I need your expertise with a couple of things youth related, so I'm going to reach out to you about that if that's okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think we'll have to call it a meeting, but I will. I think just identifying the next steps. Sounds like we have at least one that's pretty ripe for presenting to the full commission. And if we're able to maybe get that draft list of goals and criteria put together before we meet with the school district, I think that'll be a good interim step to that. So and I did, my other bit of homework was to do the youth subcommittee's survey. I have that written out for your review. I'll send that out. I also have somebody putting together proposed new dates for the conversations with SROs, or students who've interacted with SROs and the youth subcommittee general session. And then that's the other thing we want to ask the school district about, is how to get in touch with the admin and the parents and things like that. So we have a lot of good stuff in process, and we'll just keep rolling into the next thing. I'm not gonna put Lauren on the spot, but
Put on the
do you guys remember as next time subcommittee or as next time full commission? We've talked about that.
Next week is, I think, full commission. I think we're doing every other week. I think.
Okay. And for a while there, we had them stacked, and then now it's every other. Okay, so we will keep the conversation going with the collaborative discussion on the criteria in the meantime. Okay.
Good.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.